Is there a lot of noise in your life? Are there a lot of people giving you a lot of opinions and you don't know what to do? I can relate.
Raising neurodivergent kids is messy, beautiful, and a lot. I'm Mary Ellen Yates, and this is Growing Together Neurodiversity at Home. Let's figure it out together.
Okay, let's get started. So, I have two times in my parenthood journey so far that I regret listening to other people and should have followed my gut. The first time was waiting to get my son tested for neurodivergence. And then my second regret is waiting so long to medicate. So let's dive into those today. Okay, so let's talk about my first son waiting to get diagnosed. He didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until he was probably 7 or 8. And it wasn't until last year when he was 10 that he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Around the age of 2, I knew that my oldest son had ADHD. Parents had it, my younger sister had it, my husband had it. I didn't know at the time that I had it, but I was around a lot of people that had ADHD, and I was pretty positive he did. You can watch my other video about signs my son had for that neurodivergence. But anyway, so I knew at a young age, but my mom, who used to be a child adolescent psychotherapist, said, well, you don't really need to get tested because he's not in school. That's really when parents a lot of times will get tested because they're having problems in school. So I put it off. He did try preschool for about 3 months and he got kicked out because of a lot of ADHD symptoms and not being able to control his behavior. And so then we decided to homeschool. So still at that point, it's like, well, he's not in school, so I can just manage it. And so I just kept managing it. Well, by the time he turned 5, we ended up moving to Germany. And Germany was wonderful. We love Germany. We miss Germany. Everyone misses Germany. But the thing is, it does make it a lot harder to get diagnoses when you're not a fluent native speaker. So I struggled a lot with getting diagnoses for my son. And I noticed he was starting to have some struggles with learning to read. So he was tested and confirmed with the on base school. And then he was seeing a psychologist. Eventually, I brought him to a German child and adolescent psychotherapy clinic so that they could test him. I felt like something else was probably going on besides ADHD, but that's the only thing they could fully confirm because of the language barrier. So it wasn't until he was 10 until he got the diagnosis for ASD. And in the meantime, we were feeling like he was defiant and he wasn't recognizing authority and he was just deliberately not obeying. And we had a lot of negative perception of why he was doing certain things. Well, now that we know that he has autism spectrum disorder, we understand him better and he understands himself better. He, as a young kid, would say, what's wrong with my brain? Why does my brain do this? He knew that something was different and it made me really sad. And I feel bad because we lost that time thinking negative thoughts of him. A lot of the times when he was not obeying, a lot of that was a fixation and him having a hard time switching his focus to something else. He was fixated on this thing. And a lot of his destructive behavior was a lot of curiosity, trying to analyze the parts of things and taking things apart and then destroying it. We can't bring anything into the home without explaining it to him first. If he sees it by himself, it's gone or destroyed or whatever. But we were thinking he was doing it out of maliciousness where he really was just being curious. And so I think it matters why they're doing behaviors. I think it matters because it frames how we think of them and how we treat them and how we react to situations. I think knowledge is power. I think a lot of people are afraid of the diagnoses because they're afraid of what that means for their kid. But my kid is who he's going to be. So I think it's important for him to know who he is and then to be able to advocate for himself for what he needs. And I'm just here to give the tools that he needs to do that. And so I feel like we could have supported him better if we had had that diagnosis. But this is part of our journey and hopefully it'll help us with our other kids. Autism wasn't even on our radar for my son until my second son, who had more obvious autistic traits, started showing signs. And then we eventually found a diagnosis for him. If my older son had gotten tested earlier, he might have came back with that ASD diagnosis back then. And then we might have picked it up on my younger son way quicker too. So I feel like it delayed everyone because we were spinning our wheels trying to figure out what was going on. And we didn't have the resources there to help us. So if I could do it again, I would have definitely gotten him diagnosed earlier. And it would have been easier when it was earlier because it was only him. But anyway, my second regret is waiting so long to medicate. I tend to be on the crunchier side, natural remedies, and I was holding off. There's a lot of fears with medication. I was nervous about him not gaining weight. And as a pediatric nurse, my expertise was medical, it was not psychiatric, and it made me nervous, to be honest. So I waited, but he struggled so much for so many years. And now that he is medicated, he's thriving. He's doing so much better. He has other resources in place that's helping him. His self-esteem is better. He says that he's happier. All these things have happened because he's been able to get medicated and have the resources he needed. How awful to have years of not thriving and low self-esteem because of that, and feeling like you're less than other people, and having struggling relationships with other family members because of the actions that he would take and the things he would do. And I wish I would have medicated him sooner. But his process did take a while because he needed his supplements to be at a therapeutic dose as well. So some of that was situational, and some of that was my fear, and some of that was just his body needed to be ready for that. So it wasn't all my fault for not medicating, but I probably could have looked into it a lot sooner. So, yeah, so those were my two things that I probably would do differently in the future if I could look back. And that's what I have for you. Did you debate about medicating? Did you debate about a diagnosis? What finally made you decide to do those things? And I look forward to hearing your comments. Bye.